Monica was going to go next.
Yes.
So yeah. Awesome. So Monica, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Monica, and I am a software developer. I work at IntelliGuard. It's a platform, a cloud-based platform for managing medication inventory. And I work on I do full stack development, but my favorite part is the UI part, and we use Angular there. So I use this on a somewhat daily basis. And today I am going to share with you what I know about Angular validators. So let me go ahead and start this presentation. So I'll go ahead and go through these slides. And then after I go through the slides, I will share some code with you. So what we'll cover today is validators with reactive forms. There's slightly different ways to use validators depending on whether you're working with reactive forms or template-driven forms. And I'm going to focus today on reactive forms. I will share with you a link at the end in case you want to do a little more research on template-driven forms. But today I'll focus on reactive forms. And if your app at work is anything like ours, you might have a mishmash of reactive and template-driven forms in your app. And so it's just important to know that they are slightly different, and there is a slightly different way to use the validators. So just the awareness of what type of form you're working in. And we'll go through built-in validators, custom validators, synchronous and async validators, CSS classes, and cross-validation. So what is a validator? A validator is a function that processes a form control or collection of controls and returns an error map or null. A null map means that validation has passed. So I put a couple of resources here. The validator function shows you what a validator, like if you create any validator function needs to implement this interface. So your validator function will take in a control that implements the abstract control. So this can be a form control, a form group, or a form array. And your method should return either validation errors or null. A null meaning there is no error. And your validation error will look something, your validation error object will look something like this. And I'll show you what that looks like in code. So back to the presentation. So we'll go to the next slide. And so here I want to show you the built-in validators. These are the validators that Angular provides to you without you having to write any custom code. These are all built-in validators, and they kind of correspond with the native HTML native control validators. So that's something that you could use. Next slide. So, and then out of these, I wanted to distinguish between synchronous validators and async validators. So here in the built-in validators, you can see that all these are synchronous validators. If you look at their signatures, they're slightly different. They'll return validator function versus an async validator function. So synchronous validators are synchronous functions that take a control instance and immediately return either a set of validation errors or a null. And you can pass these in as the second argument when you instantiate a form control. I can show you what that is in code. And then here, out of the built-in validators, you have one async validator. So an async validator is asynchronous function that takes a control instance and returns a promise or an observable that later emits a set of validation errors or null. And you can pass these in as the third argument when you instantiate a form control. One of the common use cases when you're doing custom validation is like something like you're having somebody fill out a form, and let's say they're creating a username, and the username has to be unique. So you would probably have to go back to your server, go to your database, check if that username has already been used, and if not, then it's valid, but if it's already in use, that it would be invalid. So it's something that happens, like you have to go back to the server and get a result so it doesn't happen synchronously. And so there are validators that support that use case. And we have custom validators. The built-in validators don't always match the exact use case of your application. So you sometimes need to create a custom validator. And we have cross-field validation. So you might need to validate the values of two controls. So to evaluate both controls in a single custom validator, you must perform the validation in a common ancestor control. For example, a form group that has both of the controls that you need to check. And I think, okay, yeah. And then there's the form control status CSS classes. So when your form is invalid, Angular automatically puts these classes on your form. So it makes it easier to style your form when your form is invalid, or if it's dirty. Like, you can use all these classes to help you style your form based on the validity. Okay, and so we'll exit this for now, and we'll go to the code and to the app. So this is the little app that I created, an example app. It's just the donut order form. And this form currently has no validation. So if you see here, I'm spitting out the model on the side so you can see what's in the model there. So you can see I'm typing. And our model matches what we're typing into the form. You can choose the date. Just to note also, I'm using Angular material. I like my forms, my UI to look nice, but I don't like to spend a lot of time styling it. So I am using Angular material. And I just want you to notice that because there's no validation here, the validity is true. I don't have anything here to check the values of this form. So I can submit the form, and there's nothing preventing me from sending bad data to the server. So let's look at our form before I've added any validators to it. So here I'm showing the app orders component. And if we go back here, I'll start with the component code. So we have our order form. We have some flavors for the donuts. And here is, we have hours. So our donut shop is 24-hour shop, and you can pick up your donuts anytime you want. So we have this to populate the hour pickup time. And this is the most important part. So this is our model and our form model. We're using reactive forms, so we have the form group, and then we have form controls within here. We have our it has a first name, a last name, a pickup date, a pickup range, so the start time and the end time. And then we can also add multiple donuts to our order. So we have a form array here. So we have the donuts form array, and then this is how we populate it. And so and then when we submit the order, we just show the snack bar, and then we reset the form. And our HTML is basically just binding to that model. So we're binding to our donut order form. We have our submit button here, and then we're binding to the model. So that's kind of our basic form without validation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch it out for a form that has validators. So comment out this one and uncomment this. Save it. And it should automatically update. So now we have a form that has validators on it. And you can see that right off the bat, the form is invalid because we've said that you need to do certain things before you can submit your form. So if you notice here, I'm going to try to submit it and I can't because there are some things wrong with it. So first of all, I'll show you. So now we'll go to our orders with validators. I think one of the most important things is that when a form is invalid, we don't want to submit it. We don't want to submit bad data to the server. So here you can see that I have the donut order form valid check, and this has to be true before we can submit the order. And then I want to show you that down here. This is what I love about reactive forms. You can just kind of spit out the model here. So that's what we're showing. We're showing the form's value and showing it as JSON. And we're also showing whether the form is valid. And then I will show you the validators that we've added. So back to the form over here, the form model, you can see that there are some changes to this form. I've added validators to it. So here you can see all of the values are required. So you can see this is a built-in Angular validator. And just to look at the signature, I think this is useful for me. And hopefully it'll be useful for you. So, you can see the form control signature and what it takes. So the form control, first, it will take the state. So we're just passing in an empty string as the initial state. And then you could see that the next parameter is a validator. So you can either pass in a single validator function, or you can pass in an array of validator functions. And then or you can pass in control options, but we won't go into that. And then the third parameter is async validator. So you can pass a single async validator function, or you can pass an array. And so, yeah. So you can see here, I have the required validator on all of these. And then over here, these are all taking single validators. But over here on the quantity, I've added several validators, and these are all built-in validators. So I've said that, you have to pass in the quantity. It has to be a number. So this is a regular expression that says it has to be a number. And the max number that you can enter is 13. We only allow you to have 1 dozen per donut type. And yeah, so that is that. And what did I want to show you next? Sorry, let me check my notes. Okay, so we've got, Okay, and the last thing, I guess, we have a custom validator, right? So this one, I'm showing you 2 things in one here. So this is a custom validator, but it's also a cross-control validator. So I am checking the value of 2 different controls. I'm showing you, so we'll go back to the form. I want these to be the pickup time, the start time to be before the end time. If you have it reversed, then it's invalid. So if we look at our time range validator, you can see that let me start here. We are putting this at the form group level. So if you're doing cross-control validation, you want to put it at the highest level that has both of the controls that you want to validate. So you could even, if you wanted to, you can put your validator at the form level, up here at this level, and then you'd have access to all of these controls in your validator. So in this case, we're putting it at the pickup range level. So when I come over to my validator, this control is going to have that form group in it. And from that control, I can get the start time and the end time, and then I can validate that the start time is before the end time. And then if the form is valid, then I return nothing. I return null. If the form is invalid, then I'm returning an object that has my error in it. And there is slight error there. Yeah, so this is what we mean by when there are no errors. If the form is valid, we return null. And then if it's invalid, we return an object. So back to the form. So again, we can't submit it if it's invalid. These fields are required. This is required. You can see in this point, it is, you can see it's invalid because my pickup time was not before my end time. So now you can see here that the form is valid. But let's say if I'm missing something, then it's invalid. So just want to show you how that works. The state of the form is based on those validators that you passed in. So you could see if I enter something that is not a number, my form validity is false. If I enter something that's over 13, my form validity is false.
What about
so
zero?
And then, sorry?
What about a
What's their
zero,
question?
zero quantity? Zero?
It's a number, so it's valid.
Okay.
Yeah. You could add a custom validator, or you could add, whatever you want. Like if you don't want zeros in your form, then you could add some more validators for that. And then what else did I want to show you? So I want to show you now that you can, let's see, I had some. So these are the CSS classes. So automatically when something is invalid, or like if it's touched or not pristine or whatever, Angular will put these matching classes on the element. So in this case, I said, like, if at the pickup range level, we have an invalid and a touched form, then give it a red border. And then let me also, let me save that. And while we're at it, I will also uncomment some of this. Well, first, let me show you that. We're nearing the end here, so back over here. I guess I don't have to do all that. So see here, because I've touched it and because the validation is not what I said, pickup time has to be before the start time, then we have a red border around it. So there's that. And you can see if it's invalid, then, and that's because Angular is putting those classes around this form group. And one last thing that I wanted to show you is how you can key off of those errors to give specific messages in the UI. So for here, like if you look at the quantity, so let's see, here I can show you how you can see the errors. So here, what I'm doing is just so you can see the errors on the object. You can spit them out to the UI like this. So on my pickup range form group, I can get all the errors and see if there's a pickup range error, and show a specific message if we have a pickup range error. And over here, we can show an error if we have a specific quantity error. So if we have like, so here you can see the pattern is named, the error name is pattern. This is one of the built-in validators, max. This is another built-in validator. And this validator down here, you can see that this is, the name is pickup range error. And this is the name that I've given in my component. So in the component, that's the name that I gave it, pickup range error. So if we go back here, see, you can see because it's invalid to begin with, it's showing that message, the pickup start time is greater than the end time. If I fix that, then that is no longer there. I also, like if you've entered, that is valid. But if I've entered 14, because we said the highest number is 13, then you have your no more than a baker's dozen here. Or if you've entered non-numbers, we can show numbers only error. Yeah, and that is about it, I think. Yeah, I don't think that's everything I wanted to show you. Yeah, that's all I have. So hopefully, oh, and I guess finish my presentation. I put a resource here. So if you do want to learn more about validators, or if you want to look up how to do template driven forms, specific things, there's this link here. And this is pretty much where I got all my information. This is the Angular documentation. So it has really good, you know, information on how to do specific things. And what I love about the documentation too is that there's always an example, and you have these live examples. And so if you can play around with this and you look up how to do something, and they have the template form examples here if you want to look up how to do something. It takes a little bit of time to load, but you can play around with this. And yeah, and that's it.